Okay, the time is 7:01. I'll call the meeting of the Oxford Board of Selectmen for September 15th to order. I would like to read this announcement first. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, which is General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order concerning imposition and strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Meetings in the town of Oxford are being conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in this order. And the first item on our agenda is a discussion about the Huguenot Oak. And I'll open the floor to Glenn Churosky. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Dennis, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, rest of the Conservation Committee. I'm normally in front of commissions. The rest of the selectmen. Thank you for hearing me on the Huguenot Oak. That last living history. Hopefully you can hear me correctly. Sometimes some commissions say I'm muted, or if there's any problem hearing me, please let me know. But to be brief about this, as brief as possible, as you know by now, the Huguenot Oak has passed. This year there was a couple of leaves left, and they died, and the tree is now passed. The tree is approximately, just generally, if it was 1684 was when they built the fort, and this was a guidepost on the trail amongst three other oak trees in Oxford, one near Fallon Ave, and there you go with that. Thank you very much. The one on Fallon was moved for a gas station generally in that area, and then Main Street was widened in the 50s, so that was taken. And here's the oak. I was just there today, coming out of Connecticut. I stopped in, and the girth is 28 feet, DB8 diameter, breast height. I sent in something this afternoon about the largest and oldest white oak in the country at the time, died in 38. That was 30 inches, 30 feet in circumference, 30 feet and 10 inches. So this is close to that. And if it was that large at the time, if our oak, this last Huguenot oak, was there during the fort, we can imagine potentially that it might have been as much as 200 years old. So this oak generally, once it's cut down, just like the one in West Virginia, they counted the rings and they found it to be up to 504 years old. This one I'm sure is going to range up into that 500-year span. I had been at the Oak when I was a kid. My next door neighbor had friends next to it, and so we all knew about this oak. Now have to change this little number 7 Huguenot Oak because it says the last living evidence. It's not living anymore. So that brochure from the Historical Commission at some point might be changed. And again, not again, but I'm here to say any history in Oxford, I'm just like the Historical Commission. I want to be somewhat involved in it, whether it's Wellington Valley from 1835 with Ruth Degno, or here at Clerk Brothers Mill sites that I live at, or in Webster, I know it's another town, but CM Slater's Raceway, which I own a portion of that. So I feel that it's not often we have a piece of living history. We did have one, and it's now passed. And I just would ask that in some way we can celebrate this old oak. One other point about old white oaks, Quercus alba, is as I'm in the woods delineating wetlands over the years since '86, the white oak appears to be, from all the oaks I run across, these virgin forest field trees. In other words, the tree that wasn't cut down when all the rest of the forest was cut down to make way for pastures. That's why the stone walls, as you all know, are in the fields. And that 90% of our land at 1900 was field and only 10% forest. These old trees were used in many cases as locations along property boundaries, or for the cattle to get under every 5 or 7 acres, similar to what you might see in England, where you see one large oak. Those are actually called English oak in Europe or Britain. And they, because they're so long-lived, they would be there and allow for shade for the farmer and the cattle. And that's what we have here, a tree that would have been left originally from when everything else was cut. I think I'm asking that we celebrate this tree now that it's passed. And I know it's a term that people use, but the celebration of life, because it had an old life, something that I would hope that selectmen can see their way to do something for a celebration of life. I did talk to Mr. Dyball, and he also had, he from him and Miss Jean O'Reilly, Jean, there was some discussion with salvaging some of the wood. You might have heard this. The one in West Virginia, gavels were made for judges out of it. 1938 was when that, if I didn't say that before I died. And tabletops or canes. Mr. Sean had mentioned cane, as Charlton has a cane for its oldest resident. And maybe there will be something carved like at the library where you have the carving. That's what Mr. Sean had also mentioned, that there might be a carving of the base of the tree. So that's all I want to bring forward. I think our history is something maybe some people today don't, less people look at it. I believe it's important. I try to preserve my mill site here, the 1714 property that I have, and which was Ebenezer Larned's at first, and then in 1835 it was David and Stephen Barton bought it off the Larneds. So for that, I'll conclude now. I know I might talk too long on this, but hope we can recognize this recently passed piece of our living history. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Glenn, for bringing that to our attention. Board members, do we have any comments or questions of Glenn?
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I might have missed something, but are we planning on cutting down this tree or anything along those lines?
I'll state with Mr. Dyball said, yes, the tree is dead. And they weren't going to leave it up.
Okay.
Reasons of losing limbs and dropping on cars, and it's on the side of the road. There is one other small point I might make on this white oak. There are two small white oaks. I'm going to get to your full question, but there are also one other point. There are two smaller white oaks adjacent to this large oak. They might be the offspring of the original Huguenot oak. It's something to consider in genetics down the road, can prove whether or not those are offsprings of that original oak. And I think that would be very important to understand too, that we might have still living history through the offspring. But back to your question, there was talk by Mr. Dyball and Ms. O'Reilly, according to Mr. Dyball, discussion between the two, that it would be coming down and there'll be things made out of it potentially, not sure if your town manager's office or the selectman's office shared this with you, but I would hope that you do find and have time to read about I don't know if you'll see it. Where am I here? Where am I? Mingo oak. The Mingo oak, again, is the other white oak that's historical, that had people observe it when it died, and was a piece of history. The state forester was involved. Politicians were involved for its end of life. I didn't know about this until today. I was looking at the oldest white oak in the country, and my son pulled this thing out, and then I sent it along after I reviewed it, because it does talk about, again, one of our older trees. In a virgin forest field tree, your northern red oak dies earlier, even though those were field trees. They seem to rot earlier. Again, me being in the woods since '86, since I was a kid. Then we also had chestnuts, American chestnut. There was still one left dead on the ground that was massive size near Martin Brothers Cow and Pig Farm, the Martin Crest, when I was a kid up on the hill. And then there are the black oak the white ash and black ash. Those are other historic field trees. And so out of that gamut, you're going to find the white oak is one of the longest lived ones. And another point of that, behind my mother's house on Wellington Road, we have a virgin forest white oak that's still standing. So again, they were a very long-lived tree. In the end, the Huguenots did recognize this one and the other two that were recently taken down in 40 and 50. So yes, the tree will come down.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead,
Thank you.
Cheryl.
Yep.
Nope. Thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead, John.
Uh, I was wondering, how much of the tree will be left once it's down? Is there going to be a stump there? And the reason why I ask this, Glenn, is I noticed that the tree that's was taken down in front of the library. What they did is they took it down to a certain level and they made the rest into a carving.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if maybe something could be done to do some carving there to designate this as the last living Huguenot oak.
Thank
which
you again.
passed
I
at such
did
and such
briefly
a
mention
time.
that earlier. Thank you, Cousin John.
Yeah.
No, that was the discussion I had with Mr. Dival, that is what they're thinking about doing with it. In fact, he mentioned the library tree, that this could be another carving to represent whatever shows up on it, but instead of just cutting the tree right down to the base and saying there's the stump and grinding it, that we would have something for however many years it lasts until it might rot. We might say about the one that was in West Virginia, when they did cut that down, the center of it was rotted, but only 20 feet up was rotted. And then they salvaged the next, I think there was a 60-foot trunk and a 40-foot trunk left that they eventually milled. But we'll know more about this when they do top it, probably 10 feet up or whatever they just did at the library. And I might say something that my thoughts about carving these things, such as the one across from Clerk, Carbuncle Road, Carbuncle Drive, when they carved that one, and the one at the library. I do have a suggestion, and this will be brief. When you cut the thing flush off, then it allows water to sit there. Myself, I would put a peak on it and then seal it so that it can shed off and not rot so quickly from the center, because it's cut flush and water sits there. So I will make that suggestion. And once I saw the one at the center, and it's be a better way to keep it longer. So it might last.
As far as the wood that will be taken down, I certainly would hope that we could do something with it, whether it be making gavels, furniture, or some piece of furniture that we can put into the library. I know at one point we did have a gavel, a selectman's gavel, that was made from a limb of the Huguenot Oak. And when I became chairman back in the 70s, I used that gavel, and it had a designation on it that said it was from the Huguenot Oak. That gavel was here for many, many years, long before I got here. And sometime during the 80s, someone walked off with it, which is unfortunate. But it would be nice to have the selectmen replace that gavel, because it was a selectman's gavel for many, many years.
I'm sure these are the thoughts of the president, from what I understand. Sean, is the thoughts of the historical commission to make things that will last a long time. That unfortunate that things get taken away. The story back to the Mingo Oak in West Virginia, they had a placard on the side of the road or highway, and it stayed there for years, and then all of a sudden somebody took that placard. So yeah. We have to watch out for those type of things happening. But we would hope that this thing that the French Huguenots walked by to get to the fort, along with the other ones, just stays with us for many, many years to come. Parts of it. And, that's my thought about both growing up with a large one in my backyard that Wellington would have had in his fields, or this one where when I was a kid we would drive to Russell Lane with the house with my neighbors. And that was always on the way by. There were only 2 houses up Russell Lane.
Well, thank you for your suggestions, Glenn. I appreciate it.
No, I thank you for your time. I know you got other things to do, and I appreciate that you could hear me. Is there anything else?
Glenn, I'd like to suggest if they can leave a piece of that and do carving, maybe we could get some sort of a plaque made, so with some information on it about the history of that tree, because years to come, when all of us are long gone, it'd be nice that people that are in town could look at that and understand the purpose of that tree.
Totally with you. As history is, we want to maintain our history, let me say, as far as I'm concerned, uh, because we learn from old history as history does repeat itself. And the French Huguenots went through quite a bit with the Indians, and then finally the English settlers came in, and by 1713, oh, there was one small point I want to make. Here's another point, one last very point. Our original town seal, I was asking the selectmen to be the judges in the town high school with the art department to come up with a design for the monument, Welcome to Oxford. We do have that oak leaf on the Huguenot monument is from the Huguenot Oak. Mr. Donnelly originally had drawn up the seal and had picked up a red oak leaf because it wasn't a major issue at the time when he made the seal or helped to make a newer seal for the town. Put the red oak on there, and I recognized that I thought it should be the white oak. And through research, and then eventually through the town clerk, she came up with the original old seal that was in a vault. And we looked at that old seal. It was very indescript leaf, but it was a white oak leaf. And that's what helped the selectmen to decide. Mr. Coonan at the time had said, "We're not going to change the seal, Glenn. No. So it took me more months to finally come up with, here it is. Here's the original, even through research on history, when we came up with the white oak on our seal or the oak on a seal. Eventually, we couldn't decipher it. But then again, the town clerk came up with the old stamp, and there it was, the white oak. And then I went to the white oak when it was living at that time, 2010, could have been 2009 because we put it up in 10, that we brought that white oak leaf from that Huguenot oak and the acorns. And Mr. Donnelly then created the new town seal, the white oak on it, as it should have been. But it was just an error that it was drawn with a red oak earlier. And now your newer seals, even probably at the, well, you're not there, but at the town hall, the selectmen normally sit, it's now white oak. That is the Huguenot oak, white oak.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
We thank you all for what you do for us.
All right. Well, we thank you again very much for that. And we look forward to doing something and with that in the future, and I'm sure that between Sean and yourself and our conservation commission, historical commission, we'll get something done to preserve that.
Please keep me informed. Thank you again.
Thank you, Glenn. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is a public hearing for a poll petition to give Mass Electric and Verizon permission to install 2 jointly owned poles on Brown Road. And I'll read the public hearing notice. Under the provisions of the general laws of Massachusetts, Chapter 166, and any additions or amendments thereto, please be advised that at their meeting of Tuesday, September 15, 2020 at 7:10, the Oxford Board of Selectmen will consider a request to give Mass Electric Company doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England Incorporated permission to install 2 jointly owned poles on Brown Road, beginning at a point approximately 3,265 feet southeast of the center line of the intersection of Dana Road and continually going approximately 20 feet in a northern direction. Installed 2 40C2 poles, P27 and P28 on Brown Road for a new house at 51 Brown Road. The meeting will be held remotely. The petition can be found on the Board of Selectmen website. If you have any questions, you can contact the Selectmen's office, and hopefully you can you either present your questions or can discuss your concerns at this meeting. So, do we have somebody from National Grid here?
Mr. Chairman, okay,
Yes.
I just want to make sure that they could unmute themselves, and I think they have. I think Mark Tapley from National Grid, if I'm not mistaken, is here on the phone.
All right.
Yes, that is correct.
Great.
we thank you for coming. We've received a diagram and all your information. Is there something else you'd like to just say to the board to educate them any further?
So this isn't my job. I'm covering for someone else that did this job, but I did get the background on it. So what we're doing here is there's a new home going in at address 51 Brown Road, and our current line ends at pole 29 on Brown Road. So in order to serve them, we have to go roughly 280 feet to serve them, and our distance we're allowed to go is only 150 feet between poles in these residential areas, especially when we're only running secondary. So we're going to be placing the transformer on pole 29, where it's currently primary already, and then we'll be installing 2 new poles to reach the new home and then go across the street with the service drop.
Oh. All right. Board members, any questions or concerns? And not hearing any, I would, is there anybody from the public that would like to say something? If you're on phone, you need to hit *6 on your phone so that you can unmute yourself and say anything in regards to this project. So is there anybody in the public? I do not see anybody that seems to be unmuting, so. And board members, we're okay. All right, then, I would entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing, so I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in affirmative, the public hearing is closed. Then if there's no other further questions, I would entertain a motion to grant this request for the, put these 2 poles on Brown Road.
I would make a motion that the board give Mass Electric Company permission to install 2 jointly owned poles on Brown Road.
I second that motion.
All right, any comments or questions? Then I will call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. That's 5 in affirmative. Mark, we thank you very much. You are approved, or your partner is approved on that job, and we thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. Bye.
You too. All right. Okay. All right. Next item is Maple Ave grant of a license to National Grid. And this is like take a guide wire down or something like that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
If you'd like, I can enlighten the board. I had gotten this notification from National Grid on Friday, and it is different than a poll petition. It is actually requesting the board to grant a license to National Grid to be able to remove a guy wire, a tree guy on church property, because they're going to do some tree work. So they can't do that unless you actually grant them the license. I think we might have somebody who has joined our meeting from the church, the First Congregational Church at 355 Main Street. Yep, there he is, right there in front of the church. I can see him. You know, I think that from what I had gathered from Carol Childress from National Grid, that it is, you know, something in which they're only looking to do this in order to actually address the tree issue. And then, you know, obviously it goes back to the way it would have been, but they need to actually be able to conduct the work, and the wire is in the way.
All right, Ted, is there anything you could add to that, or is that pretty much?
No, that's 100% correct. We've been looking to take we had 2 trees on the property. Both were deemed to be a little bit hazardous. The one in particular that's still standing because they couldn't finish the job has the guy wire over. That one was right over our parking spaces. And it's they started the work at the beginning of the COVID shutdown. And we've been trying desperately to get National Grid to get on this for us. It's been a long process. That tree trunk is now budding new growth. So we'd like to finish having that taken down if possible. And the only way we can do that is to have that guy wire removed.
All right. Board members, any questions? No, they're not seeing any. I would entertain a motion to approve the grant of a license to National Grid, take that guy wire down.
Make that motion.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Any comments? Then I call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. National Grid has that license. And Ted, good luck. Hope that goes a lot faster than 3-4 months, huh?
I sure hope so. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate
right.
you hearing us today.
And thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Next item on our agenda is declaration of surplus supplies, equipment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you have a correspondence from Katie McKenna, in particular, is looking to surplus 3 items from the board. They are all older iPhones that have either a cracked camera or an operating system that no longer works with what is current. They're valued at $140 salvage value. And she's looking to potentially sell it to itsworthmore.com.
All right, thank you. Any comments from the board? All right, then I'd entertain a motion to have these 3 iPhones declared as surplus.
Make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second, so I will call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. Those are surplus. And we thank you for bringing that to our attention. We go to the fall meeting warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's very hard to believe. We just had our Maytown meeting in June, at the end of June, and we're already fast upon our fall town meeting. Before you have the last official draft of the actual warrant, and if we get approval tonight, we'll seek to post it in advance of our fall October town meeting, which is scheduled for October 7th at 7 p.m. on Wednesday evening. There is a total of 17 articles that are to be presented on the warrant. The first several of the articles are all typical routine financial articles, paying a bill from a previous fiscal year, looking to codify the language for purchase lease agreements for vehicles that have already been approved in our previous town meeting for capital outlay, putting money into our stabilization account, our capital stabilization account, and our building improvement funds. There's also Article 7, which has to deal with the PEG access and the new PEG account. As you know, we knew going into this that we would be short some dollars, so there's a capital request along with that particular department. Article 8 is looking to be sponsored by myself and at the requests of some department heads who recognize we budgeted extremely conservatively because of the COVID pandemic and the fact that we did not have a budget set from the state. Since we did our town meeting, the state has said that it will basically level fund. And as you know, my figures were even more conservative based on the information that we were getting from the major leaders in the state legislature. I do believe that we can make necessary adjustments to some budgets, including places like the town clerk's office and DPW. And so that's what Article 8 will seek to do. Article 9 is looking to actually put some money towards contract tree care and removal. As you know, we've had this gypsy moth issue. We did put money into the budget, however, it's still far, far short from what we really need. And the fact that we may have an ability to take some one-time money, it's something that I've discussed with the DPW director. And so there is an article, and hopefully the townspeople will approve that. That's one of the major issues, as you have seen when we had a storm, where we had over 75 calls of trees being downed in people's property, on houses, on lines, and the like. And we just need to even bring more attention to that endeavor of removing those hazards for public safety and public well-being before winter comes and before we actually get any more tropical type weather. Article 10 is seeking to actually use money that we have already put in place for a capital need, mainly the self-contained breathing apparatus. And since we did get a $200,000 assistance firefighter grant, this is to try to repurpose that money within the department for incident command vehicles. The next item is something that has been put forward and supported by the Conservation Commission, and this board wanted to see it as a warrant article in previous meeting, and it has to do with Robinson Ponds Protection District and actually trying to preserve the water quality even further, and it's an article to actually restrict watercraft from the actual pond in the way that it would only allow electric watercraft that was powered by electricity, not by gas or diesel. Article 12 is looking to correct something that was incorrectly logged years ago in 1951. As you know, this board has gone forward and entered into a community host agreement for a retail marijuana establishment at the corner of Route 56 and Route 20. And this, once the purchase and sale was going through, there was a very small sliver. We're talking 855 square feet that at one time in the 1950s was part of a tax title property. And even though it's very clear that the entire properties of the little 855 square feet, along with the rest of it, were both in tax title, the 855 square feet was never recorded. And this is to correct that so that that purchase can go forward and that we can start to actually have real movement on the development of that site. The next item is not the next item, but the next article has to do with the town clerk residency requirement. I am putting this before not only the board, but also the townspeople to look at the professionalization of the town's clerk position. All other department heads are rigorously professionally posted and recruited. And this is a condition. It's the only professional department head position that has this residency requirement that goes back a number of years when there was a transition between elected clerks to professional status clerks. We have it both in our bylaw, in our charter, and that would require a change on both accounts. We're going to discuss later on in the actual upcoming agenda what has transpired with our departure of our current clerk and the status of where we're at with trying to recruit an actual replacement. And one of the largest problems we're having is because of this residency requirement. The next article that I want to speak to is just the fact that we're looking to update a section of the building inspector bylaw. Once again, we're trying to bring all of our inspectors and our enforcement divisions all in the same parallel. As you know, especially with COVID, our Board of Health inspector has been able to actually effectively implement enforcement actions, and we want to be able to bring current our building inspector bylaw to be consistent with the way that our Board of Health agent and any number of enforcement capabilities are in the town. Article 16 is looking to put together the article that the Board of Selectmen voted to put on the warrant, and that has to do with changing the obtaining of a special permit for egg-laying ducks and chickens to making that a license, and actually changing the process to make it much more resident friendly and more cost-effective for those seeking to obtain acquisition of chickens and ducks. And Article 17 is there. It is the citizens petition that kind of spearheaded our ability to think about this Article 16. And that is an article that was sponsored by a citizen petition, and it did receive 118 signatures, even though that they had been submitted electronically. We're treating that as a regular sponsored citizen petition. I believe Article 16 will address the concerns that Article 17 will, and I think the board took a very proactive stance on that. And I would hope that we'll be able to dispense with the having to address Article 17 if the townspeople are so inclined to adopt Article 16 at the town meeting. And that would conclude the overall warrant, and I'd be looking for approval of the warrant so that we can get it posted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Jen. Board members, comments, questions?
I do.
Yes, John. Yep.
Just for clarity purposes, Article 11. It's Robinson Pond, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws. Robinson Pond Protection District. I'm kind of confused here. I don't know what this article is meant to do, because it mentions Robinson Pond and Robinson Pond District. And then 4.4 says no gas or diesel powered motorized watercraft will be allowed in any ponds, wetlands, or tributaries and streams. You know, you go from Robinson Ponds to all ponds.
No, that's actually the language within the district itself, because Robinson Pond Protection District would include tributaries, streams, and the like. So obviously there are no boats going that are electric, that are gas or diesel powered on a tributary or a small stream, but it is considered part of the district. So this is not all other streams or tributaries. It's only in response to what is Robinson Pond Protection District. So
Okay.
yeah, and the board had voted to put this on, but we're using the same language that they used to enumerate what constitutes Robinson Pond District. If
Okay.
it's just Robinson Pond,
As long as it's clear
Yeah.
that
Oh, it
doesn't
is. That's
affect
the way
Back
it's-
Rapper, Carbuncle,
Oh,
Buffalo,
no.
or any other ponds in town.
no, that section is already in the bylaw, the zoning bylaw. The 4.3 is the last section, so this is 4.4, and it's only under Robinson Pond District, so it can't be extrapolated to, the French River or any other place.
Okay.
Okay?
The other question I have is regarding Article 13, to see if the town will vote to amend general bylaws, Chapter 8, Town Clerk, by deleting Section 1.
Mhm.
What is Section 1?
It's the residency requirement, that they have to become a resident after 6 months.
So the intent here is to remove it entirely?
To remove just that piece of it. The rest of it would remain the way that it has always been in terms of the appointment process, but it would remove the residency requirement. Right now, the appointment process is the town manager forwards the candidate of their choice, and then with the majority vote of the board, the clerk would be appointed. It doesn't take away that. It actually just takes away the residency requirement.
All right.
Yeah, and so the language in the charter and the bylaw is very similar, and so we're just trying to remove that one piece of it.
Just for the record, I just want the board to know that I'm not sure that I can support doing away with the residency requirement. That's just-
And I
that's my-
really, and I thank Mr. Chairman through you. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that we're up between a really rock and a hard place, and the board is going to have to make a decision because we do not have professional candidates that can walk into the role that we currently have vacated right now to handle what we have coming on the horizon. And so, and that is after both recruitment and advertising in multiple places. And like I said, I will be going into this more in depth, but I do think it's an important thing that the townspeople will have to decide. And if not, the board has to decide in terms of the appointment piece of it.
Okay. Why do we have Article 14? It seems repetitious here.
Oh, it's one is the bylaw and one's the charter, and it speaks in both areas. That was written almost 30 years ago, so it's in both places.
It's in both places.
Right.
Exactly. There's no difference in language between the charter and the bylaw.
I think it's maybe slightly different. One talks about it in terms of where the appointment is, and they just insert it, and then afterwards, it's like they tagged it on, and afterwards, they talk about the appointment through the town manager and the select board, and then it tacks on afterwards. And the town clerk shall become a resident. And the other place talks about all the powers of the duties of the town manager, of who they appoint, and gives a whole list of everything from the fire chief to the town planner and the like. And then it also says town clerk, and then it inserts it there. So it's a slightly different area, but it's the same thing. It's only the residency piece.
So it doesn't affect the powers of the town manager in any other appointment other than the town clerk. Is that correct?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. All right. Now I have another question here.
Sure.
I guess that's it for now. I certainly want to research and study this a little bit further before I totally agree with particular articles. But as far as the warrant goes, I have no problem with supporting the warrant as long as that this is the final change and there will be no other amendments. And individually, I will be looking at each individual article and be making my own decision as to whether or not I will support them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John. On the board, questions, concerns? Sarah?
I have thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jen, I just have a couple of questions, and this just might be more of a policy than anything else. There's a couple of questions here, like Article 8, transfer of available funds for the fiscal year into the operating budget. And then Article 9, for the tree and removal service. When do you think we'll have numbers for those? Will we have them on the night of the meeting, or do you think we'll have numbers prior to?
Oh, no, excuse me. Thank you. Excellent question. You'll have them before. I always give the numbers out before. The last time, even before the town meeting, I went through the warrant and, gave you the different motions that we would be making. And so, what I'm doing right now is with department heads actually looking in to the amounts that we would want to potentially add back in. And, obviously the town clerk's area is one. We've now recognized, because we've had, not a planned departure, there's more money that needs to go into that to make sure that we not only get through this next election, but get through it with the type of resources that we need. So I anticipate, as I'm working on that, to have that to you shortly. I have a good idea where some of those things are. I know that I've asked the DPW director to give me some solid figures on what would be the best approach to try to handle these hazard trees, which I know are a big issue. I get called about them all the time in my office, and so does the DPW. And I think the residents will be really, pleased if we can address a large portion of that. So those are numbers that are being tweaked as we speak now, and I hope to have those to you shortly. I would definitely have them to you prior to the meeting.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I just have one other question.
Sure.
On Article 15, and then it says 2.3 penalties.
Mhm.
So I know, as you mentioned at the last town meeting, we approved a $300 fee for the Board of Health, like you mentioned. And so this $300 fee would come into play with the building inspector. So like, for example, if, I don't know, let's say someone built a deck, for example, but didn't pull out the necessary permit, this would give them the authority to issue that fee or fine rather?
So good question. Actually, this is another take at this particular article. We have a very old, antiquated 2-word provision that only is in the building commissioner's area, and that is upon conviction. There's no other community that says we want you to go out and enforce and be able to write, violation notices like our health has had to do in a very prominent, fairly high-profile case. They have all the authority to do that. But we have this conflicting language that basically, even though the state of Massachusetts grants a building commissioner, and in particular to be able to enforce public safety codes, they are quite within their realm to do that. This one piece makes it conflicting for the building commissioner because obviously he does put together violation notices for non-criminal civil penalties. When you start talking about conviction, you're talking about, upon conviction makes it a criminal type of interaction. And we're not about that when we're actually talking about this, but it actually makes it a uniquely strange situation where we have the word upon conviction in a civil non-criminal disposition enforcement policy. So that's important. It's important for our perspective to allow our building commissioner to do what they're doing without having that language in there. Because if someone really wanted to challenge that, they could, and it would just mean a lot more difficulty for the town to defend itself in a non-criminal civil disposition. Nobody's really ever seen that language in there. And I think, again, it's old language before real authority had been granted in the modernization of the role of the building commissioner, who is licensed through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to perform and execute the enforcement duties of a community.
So just for clarification, is the building commissioner the same as the building inspector?
No, actually, they can have the same type of role, but a building commissioner has to be certified. They go through more training, and every community can only have one commissioner in which they actually are defined by the community. So it is a higher level, much higher than a standard level than a building inspector. And most often the building inspector will report to a building commissioner, which has become really the standard because the codes continue to change and evolve. I mean, just think of the green code, right? For homes and things like that. So the role is no different than another professional licensed person, that they have to actually continue do continuing professional education, and they have to renew their ability to be a licensed commissioner. And we have to send that to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that this person is our designated licensed building commissioner. So it is a little bit different. And just for the record, the entire section is the same. The only thing that's different is the 2 words upon conviction have been removed. But I put the whole thing in there for context so that people see what is already there. So it's only removing the 2 words upon conviction, which, like I said, is really for, criminal disposition, not, civil non-criminal disposition, which is what, we're talking about in this section. That's what that is.
Okay. One very quick follow-up question. Can you give me or do you know of an example when this type of penalty would come into play? And I apologize if I'm not quite understanding the conviction and the non-conviction, but I'm just trying to understand when one of our residents would encounter this type of penalty.
Well, I think when I don't think the building commissioner has the authority to convict somebody of a criminal disposition. And I don't like that language in there for residents to have to look at, because what it means is that somehow there's some additional power that the building commissioner would have if they were able to get a conviction. It also means that, you know, for a non-criminal disposition, it really is, it completely butts heads with what that particular section is saying, because it is only for non-criminal civil disposition. And the only way that the words upon conviction would come together is if there is a criminal proceeding. And that's not what this section is about. So somewhere along the line, those, you know, people said, well, you'd have to go to court and criminally charge someone in their head, I think, in order to enforce what is routine bylaw enforcement capabilities for a building commissioner, no different than any other inspector. So it's just language that really needs to be removed because it has nothing to do with that section of the power that we give our building commissioner.
So he can assess the penalty without.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a conviction.
Yep. Same way that our building our Board of Health inspector, or anybody within that. Yes. That was the intent of the entire, you know, building inspector bylaw. If you don't allow your building inspector or commissioner to be able to do that, then you have no way to enforce your bylaw. I mean, everyone can drive by and say, we'd like you to do this. But their job actually statutorily is, you know, if they do see things that are that are detriments to the public safety, and are contrary to both, you know, don't forget there's state building code too. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have language in our bylaw, or zoning bylaw, that they actually have the ability and the statutory responsibility to enforce. It's like, think about it as, you know, teachers are being, reporters of child abuse or things like that. I mean, these people have a license, they go through a lot of training, and they're supposed to be able to make sure that both the Mass General Law for State Building Code and the local, bylaws and building code expectations are upheld. I know I'm talking a lot about it, but I'm just trying to. This is not.
No, it helps. No, it helps clarify it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, it helps clarify. I mean, I would hope that. I mean, just as an aside commentary. I mean, I would hope that, you know, our building inspector or commissioners would, you know, would work with the residents and use that fees judiciously. You know, that's all. But now that I understand what you're saying and that we're just removing a couple of words, I think I understand it a little bit better. So, thank you. And I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Hey, Cheryl. Mike, did you have a question or comment?
No, I did, but it got cleared up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I saw you after I saw Cheryl, so.
Nope, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other comments or concerns or questions? Then I would entertain a motion that we move to adopt the warrant as printed for publication in accordance with provisions of the town charter and general bylaws.
Make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more comment?
And we assume that this document that is marked draft will be the original document. We're voting.
Yes.
Original document, not a draft.
Yes.
Because what I'm looking at says draft out on every page.
Right.
It's because
until we okay it, it is a draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're making this the official warrant is what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other comments? All right, then I call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. We can print that warrant. Very good. Thank you for that clarification, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we go to town manager's report. And you're back up.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for September 3rd. All members were present.
Entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 3rd.
Make that motion.
Second,
Got a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in affirmative. They are approved.
Thank you. The next item is a actual request that is looking to have the community actually for the Central Mass Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Southwest Subregion representative. Right now, you may be aware that our Chairman Lamache has been in service to the CMMPO as a representative for the Southwest County. And that term is expiring on September 30th, 2020. This upcoming meeting is going to select different members from this Southwest area. So right now we have somebody who is from, I believe it's Charlton, and our chairman. And so what you're being asked to do this evening is that in advance of this September 24th, you need to actually place a member who could vote on making a determination of who the next representative will be. So this is your voice. I know.
Yes.
This is your voice to get onto the actual, think of it as a board committee, but they do it in a democratic way. So we would need someone who could actually vote and place names in nomination. And it might be that person who's actually been very instrumental over time. I don't know. I have not asked any other members if they would be so inclined, Mr. Chairman, but tonight you would actually be looking to appoint someone who will participate on the September 24th meeting.
Yeah, this is every 3 years, we have to get reappointed. So and the towns meet and usually they vote then that night on who would represent the region. So yes, I have been the representative for now 14 years. So what is the board's motion?
Would you like to remain the representative?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I have no problem with it. No problem.
Do you want me to make the motion that you attend the meeting, or do we have to make a motion for someone to attend and
No,
vote?
I would attend the meeting because they're gonna ask me if I wanna be representative again, and I would say yes, Like John is always stated, it's good having an Oxford selectman on that committee because then we're right in the forefront for things that are coming down the pike as far as our roads and our bike lanes and our walking paths and things like that. So there's an awful lot of things they do besides just the roads. So, yes, I'm okay with it.
So then I would make a motion to have Dennis Lamarche attend the September 24th, 2020 meeting of the CMMPO to vote on the Southwest Subregions representative.
Second the motion.
Oh,
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any more comment? And I will call. Yes, Sean.
I have a quick question. Is this the one? Is this the position where Terry Cummings is the alternate?
No.
No, that's something different.
Yes.
Okay.
He is for the town. I am for
The
I
region.
represent the region, the series.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, I'll call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll abstain. That's 4 in the affirmative, 1 abstention. I will be glad to attend that meeting and hopefully they'll vote me in again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 3 on my town manager report is the discussion topic of a temporary town clerk. As you're aware, our town clerk has recently retired. The town has both posted for the position of town clerk and temporary town clerk. After discussing it with legal counsel, looking at what we're facing in order to both conduct our upcoming town meeting and a historically unprecedented election with mail-in voting, under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 14, the Board of Selectmen is authorized to appoint a temporary town clerk. I've already conducted a screening of candidates who have applied for the town clerk position and the temporary town clerk position. I can unequivocally tell you we've had only 2 people apply for the town clerk position, and neither have been a professional clerk, and neither have had actual experience directly related to the town clerk position. The other issue is for the temporary town clerk. The interviews that I have conducted, they've only been possible because I had brought in and retained the consultant services of a former town clerk once we had the retirement announcement. With us this evening, and I'm hoping that if there are any questions about why we would move and encourage the board to potentially do a temporary town clerk appointment, that is not for this evening, but I've talked with the chairman about having set a date in advance to actually potentially meet with a candidate, and what I would like the board to be able to do is recognize that we have retained the services of Dawn McCanowitz, who's online with us here. Dawn has 25 plus years of experience as a professional town clerk and is retired, and has a vast network of retired clerks at her disposal, but had come into our town hall to assess the department while the town clerk was here, and working with our assistant town clerk. And what she has recommended to me, and so has legal counsel, is that the board seriously consider actually appointing a temporary town clerk. And with that, I would like Dawn perhaps to talk a little bit about the unusual predicament that we're in, but also why communities that have a residence requirement find it so difficult to find a professional town clerk. The days are absolutely gone by where someone can walk into the office and be a town clerk without having had the professional experience. The role has been so broadened from everything as acting as our public records officer to our chief ethics commission officer to actually doing, much more technology, both for the sharing of information and documents, as well as for being able to provide such information to the townspeople. Mr. Chairman, if you would let me, I think Dawn McCanowitz could unmute herself, and I'd ask her to come on in video if she can. Okay.
Here I am.
Hi, Dawn. Dawn, you're in front of the entire board, and maybe you can give them a little outline of what you've been trying to do to help us through this transition period.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak, and thank you to the other members of the board for giving me this opportunity. I'm not going to take a lot of your time because I know how these meetings go. I've served the public for over almost 20 years, and as an appointed town clerk, I've worked 38 elections. I've done 4 presidential elections, and I've attended many, many Board of Selectmen meetings. So it's been a long haul, but I thought I retired until I've been rehired to come on board here and try to help you find somebody during this transition time when you've are in need of a new clerk. Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, I've already committed to the town of Spencer to work their elections this fall. But you do have some looming deadlines which are critical. You have to have a town clerk attend your special town meeting coming up October 7th, and I have offered my services to be there for you. You also need to have a town clerk to run the presidential election. This is a tall order. I have been working with Jen really hard to find somebody to help you out, and spoken to many of my retired friends, and this is not a job that they want to do and come back to. This particular election this year has been just something we've never seen. And I think I mentioned in one of my memos as well that we've had almost over 30 town clerks or assistants retire just this year alone. And you've got 350 in the state, and that's just, those numbers are just incredible. The mail-in ballots are creating a big issue as well, because it's something we've never done in this office. So on top of all of the other requirements of this office, both legal, technical, we really are in need of hiring a professional and get somebody who's in there, who's trained, who's experienced. And I really want to urge you tonight to really consider looking and casting your net far and wide, to look beyond the town boundaries and to look elsewhere to find somebody who's got the experience, who can come in. And I think we do have a couple of, Jen, we have a candidate in particular, a couple people came forward. So I know you're under a town charter and you have a limitation of a residency requirement, but the job has changed considerably in 50 years. And I think this is something that, you're going to be looking at for your October town meeting. But right now, I urge you to consider hiring somebody sooner than later.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that information. Board members, do you have comments or questions about hiring a temporary town clerk?
Yes,
Yes, John.
the temporary town clerk, is there a specific time frame in which this person would be the temporary clerk? Can this person eventually transition to a full-time town clerk?
Good question, Selectman Sad. So Mark Rich, our attorney from KP Law, has said the reason that we would normally do it as I would vet all the candidates. I'd come up with who I thought would be the best candidate, and then I'd come to the board and get a majority vote along with who I put as a recommended candidate. The difference here with the Mass General Law, Chapter 41, is that it allows the board, because there may be circumstances where this was not going to be possible, allows any community, you cannot be without a clerk for a meeting. You could, I'm talking about a town meeting, you can designate that person the night of the town meeting, but that really doesn't help, for pre-planning in advance, because there's a lot that goes into getting voters ready to go. So the Mass General Law leaves it very broad, John. It allows boards to not have to require any residency, and it does not require any time period associated with it. And obviously, depending on what the outcome is for town meeting, it will put us in, a different mindset going forward. I just know that with these two major things coming up, we have to take some kind of action, and that will default on the Board of Selectmen if I have no candidates that professionally can walk into that position. And right now, for the way it's written and the way the bylaw is, we don't have anybody willing to do that. So that's why we're talking about this now. So, think of it in terms of steps. We need to do this now. What happens afterwards is not restricted by making this decision. It actually helps us, I think, move into the direction in the future, depending on what transpires both at town meeting and what will transpire for us in terms of trying to figure out how we're going to address that. I was hoping we could address more about the nuances of why this is important, because I think Dawn will attest that as she has reached out to many retired clerks, they do not want to come back to even help us in the interim. And that the other piece of it is that for any potential potentially qualified town clerks. They may be willing to, and they have been willing to submit, their resume for a potential temporary town clerk position, but they're not necessarily doing it because they want it to be, they're coming to rescue us and giving up their position someplace else. I think, the expectation is that they're going to come in and they're going to be a professional clerk, and hopefully the town will sort out which direction it's going to be. But, and I may not have more than one candidate to provide to you at that next meeting that I hope we have. But if we do have someone who is willing to leave their job to be full-time temporary town clerk, I would hope that the board wouldn't move in a direction to say, well, thank you for taking care of us in our election. And then, because they're not going to give up that job that they already have for that reason. They love the job of being a professional clerk. They want to serve the town in this capacity, but they're not going to be necessarily able to do that without a commitment from the board that they need to see all of this kind of work out, but with a commitment that it will be for some kind of duration. I don't know, Dawn, if you can talk to that a little bit, because you've had some discussions as you've been trying to reach out and recruit beyond the scope of where we have already advertised in multiple places. Go ahead.
What I can add to that is the fact that, the position itself, the professionalism of the job itself, I can attest to it from my own experience. I began and worked in the town of Southborough for almost 10 years, and I've been a resident of Holden all this time, and then became the town clerk in Sterling, and still remain the resident here. But it doesn't change what I do for my job. My goal is to serve the public, and as a master clerk, I became certified through all the training and got all the experiences, and many of my fellow clerks have done the same, and they are also appointed. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is in town to get a really good candidate. I think the days of having an elected town clerk are gone. I think you're going to find more and more towns have gone to the appointed clerks. And particularly, I think this year has just been just a very unusual year where they're just desperate to look for people. And we have to look elsewhere. These other clerks that are coming forward, are not from Oxford. They're obviously currently working, and they would be very interested in staying on. So whatever you can do to, I think, support that would be great. And then I think you're going to get a very good candidate in here. Some good people out there.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
what are we looking at for I don't want to speak numbers, but compensation for this interim clerk. Would they be an employee? Would they be stipend? Would they be 1099? What are we thinking as far as that's concerned?
They would be an employee. Anybody who works for us. There's nobody coming in here to work for nothing, but they do.
Well,
I don't think you meant that.
I'm not saying that they're not going to work for nothing. I know that. I'm just kind of wondering, if they're temporary, are they temporary employees? Are they 1099? Are they?
No. So that's another archaic terminology, because I talked with Mark Rich. I said, I really don't like the name temporary. Who likes that? You come in and you've been a professional person in another role someplace else. Most of the time we use a more gentle term like interim. We can call them town clerk if they walk through the door, and I would, want to do that. It's very hard, I think, when you use the word temporary, but that's the Mass General Law. It's not to say, it is actually to help boards and towns out when they have things like this. They don't restrict it based on time, residency, things like that, because they know by their statutory authority that they have to have someone in that position. And so they don't want to leave that chance that you just do all that you're supposed to do to try to recruit someone and say, well, we can't find anybody, locally, and therefore we're not going to appoint them. So the Mass General Law, states, and Mark Rich said that he would strongly also recommend that the town take advantage of that statute in absence of having any candidate, particularly because of what we have going on that's coming up. So they would be a regular employee because the process is very similar, except that the final vote in this regard rests with the appointing authority by the Board of Selectmen, because I cannot put together, or I cannot fulfill the intent of the bylaw and the charter the way it's written, because I don't have a real true town clerk candidate, because no one wants to come because of the residency. But we have the ability, because the statutory authority by Mass General Law says you have to have a clerk that waives that, whatever we got going on with the charter or the bylaw, that you guys now have to take the position of making sure we have some kind of coverage. And I'm just letting you know that it's not, even though the word temporary is there, and that I would hope that we could discuss that with a potential candidate, that would be something that we would discuss with them. And, knowing full well that if it is something that's really viewed as temporary, I don't think I'm going to have a candidate to give you. And I see Dawn shaking her head, and so when I'm saying temporary, I'm talking about someone who's going to walk in and, conduct the elections and take the full responsibility of the entire office. We do not have a candidate for that in a temporary fashion. We do have someone using that would entertain being a candidate before the board, because there are other, like I said, other clerks who do not want to leave their position unless they know they have, the ability. While we go through town meeting, the townspeople may decide to do this, and you still have to, have somebody in the role. And so we cannot not be without a clerk for an indefinite period of time, and we're going to need it, and the board will have to make that action, because I can't do it because I don't have a candidate. So
I think I think we're talking about two different things. I'm talking about, I'll use your word, interim town clerk for the town meeting. Correct. I'm not talking about the election.
I'm talking about both.
You're talking about both.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You're talking about potentially having. Okay, so you're talking about having potentially, only potentially, the same candidate for both, not necessarily one for the town, one to get us through town meeting, and then a second one to get us. Because did I not read somewhere? And excuse me, Dawn, I might have misread, but did I not read somewhere that Dawn was willing to step in for our town meeting?
She said that, but that was because we don't have a candidate right now that's been approved. So, so she was willing to help us while we were waiting to see what we had for candidates. So yeah, and that she said that this evening. But what I'm saying is that the other piece of it, and she's been working inside the clerk's office as well. So it's not like Dawn is just coming in and giving an analysis. She's working hand in glove with our assistant town clerk and our former clerk that was there. We brought in additional people. So they're doing that. But the time clock is running out for the election. We may not get one. The longer we wait, the less likely we're going to have someone who's going to walk in, unless Dawn can work magic and get someone to do that. I don't.
Okay. Then thank you for that clarification. But my question was only related to compensation in the event that we had to have Dawn step in and manage through our town meeting, and then bring in a more permanent candidate later on. And that's what I had read, and that's what I had understood.
Okay.
So if we can go back to that very quickly.
Sure.
If we have to do the interim through town meeting, and then a more permanent candidate. Again, going back to my original question, is the interim an employee, a temporary employee, or is it a different type of employee setup?
So if we're talking about between now and the town meeting, we have,
yes,
Dawn is a professional services contract position. So she gets
Okay.
paid as that. So she's not quote unquote an employee.
Got it.
But if we were to get somebody, and I don't know if we would have the ability to do that, who's willing to walk in and take over for the town meeting. But Dawn doesn't just go away. I mean, Dawn is also going to work with making this transition. For what she's already observed, she has been here for the last election that took place and observed and participated and worked, I think, hand in glove with our now retired clerk. So she's done all that to make sure that we would have that same kind of eyes on the ground and work with those people who've been working our elections for many years. And so
Got it.
that will
Okay.
be cool too. Yeah. And then the next person that would come in as the true interim would be somebody who would be appointed and become the clerk as an employee.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I'm gonna try to clarify in what I like to do, simple terms. From what I've done my research, what we're considering is, because at this point, there is no clerk that we can get that'll come in right now, as with the residency requirement, that'll take the job. So what we're considering is to get a professional in that's a temporary clerk. So it would be regular duties as the real clerk, and hopefully there is no time limit that we have to put on this. So this person would stay as long as we need that person. And hopefully this person would eventually become the official permanent town clerk in town. Have I kind of simplified that, Jen, basically? But that's what we're voting on.
Well, yeah. So we're voting on wanting to do, to appoint a temporary clerk, but you don't have the candidate in front of you. So we would need a meeting to do that. But there's no sense of having a meeting if the board doesn't want to move in that direction. So I'm just alerting the board that because the clock is ticking, and we're in this position that's very unique and difficult, that, I might be able to, with professional consultant, cover a little bit for the annual town meeting, but we definitely are left completely without a real professional at the helm for the overall election. So we do need a temporary town clerk.
Mr. Chair. That was me.
Go ahead, Meg.
So do we need then a motion to consider a temporary town clerk, or just say?
Yeah, I would.
I think Dennis is frozen.
But yes, that's what I'm getting, is that we need to make a motion.
I think Dennis is frozen.
So if he comes unfrozen, I'll make a motion to consider a temporary town clerk.
Wow, he's in suspended animation. All right.
Okay, so can we do a temporary town clerk prior to the town meeting?
Yes.
Since we have that language on there to make those residency changes?
Yep, you can. So Mass General Law trumps our, for lack of a better word, any bylaw or charter provision that we have that says that you have to have a clerk, and you can do a temporary town clerk. It empowers the Board of Selectmen to do that. And it does, regardless of whether we have it on for a warrant article or whether the town votes to approve these articles on the warrant or not, the Board of Selectmen will have to make that decision one way or the other. And so that's what I'm trying to say, is that you have to make the decision. I'm trying to do it so that, we don't wind up, in a position where, John, you can talk about how difficult this election is.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so Jen, I'm sorry, Meg, I know you're chair right now. I'm so sorry. You're not the frozen one right now. Who's the temporary town clerk that you want us to appoint? Is it Dawn?
No. And so I cannot bring that candidate forward until
Oh,
the
so
stance that
really,
they're gonna need to
what's
post.
really going on here is that there is a candidate, you would like us to appoint them, but we can't talk to them right now because of
Right, so
whatever.
we have a separate meeting. That's why I said we would have a separate meeting, actually have.
Well, now this is all
Board
making-
of Selectmen interview them, but they won't come forward unless they know that they're willing to do a temporary town clerk, not an interim that's gonna come for a brief period of time and do that piece of it. So tonight, all I'm looking for is the acknowledgement from the board that you indeed are going, if I don't find, an actually professionally qualified person that steps forward, happens to be a resident, and like I said, we're not getting that, the board is going to have to make a decision to appoint a temporary town clerk, one way or the other. I'm just trying to get you a little bit ahead of the curve, because it's not like we're in January when the national election is 8 months away and we have, maybe some, more recruitment effort that could be done. We really are between a rock and a hard place, because we absolutely need a formally appointed clerk to, one way or another, through the bylaw process or through the Mass General Law process, which is the temporary town clerk. So, go ahead.
And again, I'm going to apologize in advance to the board members, because you guys must think that I'm very thick, but I want to be very clear what I'm understanding here. There is a potential person you would like us to name as interim or temporary, but this individual wants reassurances that they will become the permanent final candidate.
Well, you can put a time frame on something, and then it'll be up to that person whether they'll take it or not, right? So I would love them to, if it is the will of the board, I would have been doing this anyway with a qualified candidate. I'd vet them and ask you to, make the recommendation to the board and hope that the board would support that, unless there was something that I missed that was untoward for their professional acumen or something. But normally we would do that. And so we're doing the same process, except that now we just don't have, a candidate that meets the merit of the bylaw or the charter. And therefore now the actual weight of responsibility falls upon the selectmen, because we have to appoint somebody. You can wait till the time of the election, but I know you don't want to do that, and we can't wait. We could wait for the town meeting and then hope we could get somebody, but
we can't interview this candidate nor talk to them nor get their qualifications or anything like that, other than the fact that understanding that the two of you know them.
Well, no, I mean, you will be doing that in a public meeting, but not this meeting. So, I don't know whether they're going to walk up and be willing to say, we're going to appoint you as a temporary clerk without having, voted that you're willing to appoint a temporary town clerk. Right now, we don't even have that on the table, right? We have only a town clerk. So, the three potential candidates that came forward absolutely are looking for the temporary town clerk appointment. They're not looking for, because they don't meet the merit of the bylaw or the charter provision, and nor are they going to move here. So, so that's where we're at. And so before bringing someone, even for you to interview 3 different people, I'm going to tell you right now that those 3 are not coming before you in tandem, so that the board can make up their mind about it, because they're not willing to not be the candidate and then, go back home and say, I was, going to leave this position right before an election, let's just say, or before a town meeting, or, so they just, like any professional applying for a job. I mean, this is the only one that has this provision. It's very difficult, because people, are vested in their professional career, but they also are not necessarily vested in their professional career with the notion that they're going to move or meet a residency requirement. So we have three really potentially good candidates, solid, I shouldn't say good, excellent candidates, but, not for the clerk position that has the residency requirement. So before I would normally give you a candidate and you'd, hopefully adopt that recommendation, this is to actually find out if the board is willing to move forward with having to appoint a temporary town clerk. And if you don't do it within 2 days or whatever, let's say we put a meeting together for 2 days from now because we have a candidate who's willing to come in as a temporary town clerk and be interviewed, then you're going to have to do it at a later date. And I may not have anybody again to offer you. So then you'd be on your own trying to figure out who you're going to appoint.
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Megan.
now that you're not frozen anymore, could I make a motion for the board to consider a temporary town clerk at this point?
Sure. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to consider a temporary town clerk for hire, correct?
Yes.
Okay, any more comment?
Yes,
Yes, John?
yes. Before I vote on that, I want to be totally clear on what we're really trying to do here. So I guess my question to the town manager is, do you, at this particular point in time, have any candidates that are willing to be temporary or interim town clerks?
Yes.
You do.
Yes. And the only reason was we posted the position as such. We did both because I recognized we weren't getting anybody applying for the other. And Dawn had suggested, and so had Mark, that because this is, a professional position that we coming up against a wall, we can, post for both and see what we would get. But again, after speaking to those candidates, it became crystal clear that that was the one piece of it, that it will be a temporary appointment, but meeting the merits of Mass General Law, which means no residency requirement, and hopefully an understanding that they want to serve for a period of time.
Okay, so I guess what I'm not clear on is, if we do appoint a temporary and you have candidates available that are willing to be temporary, are they willing to be able to just leave us after that temporary period is over? Or are they going to stick around in hopes that the rules will change and they would not be a residence requirement?
Dawn, I know she's shaking her head. Yes. Yes, that would be the intent. And if the rules never change, the one thing that the Mass General Law does is grant the authority to the Board of Selectmen. We've done our due diligence. We've tried this avenue. And if you need to have somebody that walks into that position as a professional clerk and can serve the town and serve the professional needs of the clerk's office, then you've done your, part of it because of the fact that, we can't get somebody who meets the merit of the local bylaw or the charter.
I just want to feel comfortable that whoever you have clearly understands that this is definitely just temporary. There will be a future posting for a permanent position down the road. There's two separate things. You're not melding these together. That's where I'm getting confused. It appears as though you're melding these two things together, the temporary and the permanent. But it's like we may be held hostage here because of the way our bylaws and our charter is written to have a residency requirement. So everything intermingled here is making this totally confusing to me. I don't know about other members of the board, but it's confusing to me.
So, go ahead.
Wait a minute. Mike, you got something to add. Go ahead.
I'm just going to try and sum this up as best I can, kind of like you tried to, Mr. Chairman. But right now, the town is without a town clerk, and we need a town clerk for the events that are coming up. All we need to do tonight is vote for a temporary town clerk. We will have another meeting in the future, date unknown, once we have candidates, so once the town manager has candidates selected to present to us, or one candidate selected to present to us for a temporary position. The three that the town manager may or may not have right now that are interested in the position, they're hoping in good faith that down the road we may consider them for a full-time position, knowing very well that that's not a guarantee. So all we're doing tonight right now is taking the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint a temporary town clerk, and it's temporary. There is going to be the job posting or whatever with the interviews and all that stuff for a more permanent. That temporary town clerk, if they want a permanent position, they're going to have to apply to that permanent position, correct?
That's only, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
That's only if the bylaw changes or doesn't change, that will constitute. Temporary can be for years, all right? So it's not, you're not held to, I know the word says temporary, but the point here is that it may not be temporary in the sense of a couple months or whatever. It's whatever the needs of the town are. So, you know, if the town votes to change the bylaw and we actually, you know, no longer have a residency requirement, then it would default back to reappointing them as the formal clerk. And I would obviously, if the person is doing an excellent job and is in the position, you would, all you would be doing is ratifying the appointment with the word temporary taken out and them becoming the town clerk. I mean, you know, you can advertise for the position and everything, but my gut instinct would tell me that the top candidate that I would present to the board would be whoever that person would be.
So there is a melding of both of these, of this one
It has
potential.
to be, yeah. It has to be, though.
So there is that.
See what, my take on this is that we've advertised and we got nobody that wants to come here because of the residency. So because of that, now we go the route by mass law that we hire a temporary. And that temporary can stay on as long as we want them to stay on. And what that means is that if a year goes by or 2 years goes by and we still can't get a person that wants to move to this town that's qualified to be the town clerk, and we got somebody that's doing the job, then why are we gonna get rid of that person that's doing the job and be stuck behind the 8 ball again? So to me, you know, we're just voting to, at this point, that we'll hire a temporary and hopefully they'll work out to eventually be our permanent, you know? That's the way I'm looking at it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Megan.
John, through the chair, would you feel better if I amended my motion to say that this is specifically related to the temporary position without the guarantee that they will end up with the permanent position?
Who are you addressing?
Yeah.
John, sorry, I thought you heard me say to John, because I feel like you're concerned with the fact that they might be melding together.
Yes.
If I amend my motion to say that this is specifically related to the temporary position, and when it comes time to hire a permanent person, we would consider our options, or, I mean, I guess I can, in a sense, I can see that because of the way the bylaw is written now, it prevented people from applying that may have applied. So while this person may be doing a wonderful job, there is the potential that should our bylaw change at the town meeting to remove the residency requirement, other qualified people may be interested in the position. So it may behoove us to, if that happens, post for the full-time clerk's position. as opposed to just moving this temporary person into the position. I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to get at, John.
Yes, that's exactly the problem and the concern that I have. We're still melding the two together.
So I'm going to
So-
then amend my motion to say that I would make a motion to consider appointment of a temporary town clerk to be revisited after town meeting, or the posting of a permanent full-time clerk once it's been determined what's going to happen with our residency requirement.
Yes, I agree with that. I think you're on the right track on this, Megan. But can we so that we can distinguish between the two so that they don't flow together, can we have a specific period of time that there's a temporary appointment, and after that point in time, we will post for a permanent town clerk?
I think that would be kind of hard considering we don't know what's going to happen at town meeting. I almost think we need to leave it open-ended, but with the understanding that once it becomes determined if there's going to be a residency requirement or not, we would post for a full-time permanent clerk's position.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Megan, and you're making a lot more sense now than what I was hearing in earlier discussions of this position. I just want it broken out so that there's a distinction between the temporary and, the permanent town clerk. There may be people that will not apply for the temporary position, okay, knowing that there's uncertainty about the future. So that's why I think that there should be a distinction between the two. The temporary shouldn't last indefinitely, like 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, and then we decide, or the manager decides that she wants to recommend that this person be there as the permanent.
John, what are we
I think
gonna
there have to
do?
be a separate
Mr.
time
Chairman,
frame.
yeah.
John,
Mr.
what
Chairman-
are we gonna do? If town meeting doesn't change the residency, and right now we have nobody that'll come to town because of the residency, what are we gonna do? So if we don't get a clerk, and then what are we gonna do for election? By law, we have to have a clerk, a certified clerk, to run the election. So,
And I don't have a problem with that, Mr. Chairman. I just have a problem of, I don't want this person to take the job as a temporary, and the temporary flows into a permanent job without a posting.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
go ahead, Jen.
All right, so I do all of the hiring for the town, and I know that the Board of Selectmen typically, other than myself and the appointment of the chief, don't do this on a regular basis. So I understand the nuances of saying we're going to appoint a temporary town clerk, which we have duly posted. It's not like you get to just appoint somebody without duly posting. We follow equal opportunity laws for employment. At which time we decide that, there is an opportunity for a permanent clerk without a residency requirement. Sure, we would post that again, but I would hope that if someone is coming in and doing a fantastic job, that I would expect that that person would be ranked pretty high in the interview process. Now, if there is problems with that, then obviously that would be an issue that we take up when you make that final recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. I just want to caution the board that by using the kind of terminology that this person would come in and maybe only be here for a few months, and then we might just decide to post again. I can tell you, and Dawn, you can tell me whether I'm wrong, I will not have a candidate to bring to you in the next, because I'm looking at days here, in the next several days, so that we can start to deal with, you know, a little bit over a month's time before we have both the town election and the town meeting. And I don't have candidates, I think, that are willing to do that. And, you know, with the notion that somehow there isn't some certainty. They're all fully employed right now. They have full-time jobs. And so they're interested in serving the town of Oxford. And they're interested in being treated as a department head and all of the things that they are currently in their other employment situation. But they're not interested in the residency piece. And so, you know, if I have no candidate to bring to you, you can make this vote that you're going to appoint a temporary town clerk. But I don't think I'm going to have a candidate to bring to you. Not with the stipulation that they might only be here to help us get through an election. I mean, we do have a consultant who's trying to help us get through a town meeting, but can't even help us with the election piece. And we need a certified clerk who's willing to do that.
Well, the thing is, we've got town meeting coming up, so you wouldn't be able to make an appointment before town meeting anyway. This appointment would have to be done after town meeting, because if the presidency requirement fails, then that person that you're recommending is going to go. They're not going to stay on.
No.
That's why they want to keep it temporary, John. If it's temporary, there's not a residency requirement.
I understand that. I'm looking at the candidate themselves. You know, what are you thinking when you're applying for this job?
Yeah.
Knowing what is before you, can anybody answer that question? What would you do as a candidate for the town clerk's position right now? What's your thinking?
I think they would look for the leadership of the board to say, we've taken the normal steps. Our bylaw is preventing us from being able to act within that spirit of it. And the Mass Laws gives us an opportunity and actually a statutory requirement to actually appoint somebody. And I'm trying to give you enough latitude before we get into nobody is walking in the door at all. We may have the opportunity right now to have fully qualified candidate or candidates be willing to be interviewed by the board and hopefully be appointed, but not with the lack of the leadership notion that somebody is not just doing this in a short period of time. Because even if the town meeting votes to change the charter, that, you know how long a charter change takes, it goes before the legislature and all of that. So it's not going to be 6 months, 3 months. It's, you know, it's going to be, it could be an entire 18-month period of time when they file the bill on our behalf. I mean, we don't have that luxury of knowing that, but that's something that could happen, and you still would need a clerk in that interim. So, you know.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Okay,
you know what, I know that there's been a lot of discussion going on with this, and I, you know, I want to make it very clear that I'm very sympathetic and I'm very empathetic to the position that the town is in, as well as I appreciate all of the work that the town manager has done, as well as the consultant, for that matter. I really do. But I also don't think that this is a prudent hiring practice for this particular individual. And I know you're between a rock and a hard place. But I
Won't be. The board will be. The board has.
Well, no, you will be too, because you're the town manager, and you will be as well. And if we have to appoint someone, we'll, you know, but I mean, I think Selectman Sad makes some excellent points. You can't hire a person, in my opinion. I mean, you can't hire a person without the proper expectations. And, you know, I understand what John is saying. I get it.
You
Thanks.
know, the best way, let me throw this out. This is all hinging on the residency requirement. If we made the appointment after the town meeting, we wouldn't have this discussion. So if we just held off till after October 7th, we will then know if there's a residency requirement or not. And at that point, we go for the full-time position.
We need a town clerk for the town meeting.
Well, that's not a problem. We have
Well,
somebody that said that they would do it. The consultant is going to
But
do it.
John, if we wait till after town meeting, okay, by the time that person gives a notice to their other job and they come back and get into this town, they are not going to have enough time to get a election for November. You understand? You're under a very tight time limit here. By the time the second week in October, you know, you're talking a month, 2 weeks later, you're giving somebody coming in to be a clerk 2 weeks to run an election. You're not going to find anybody. That's the point. That's the problem we're in right now. And it's a board problem. It's not Jen's problem. It's a board, because if we can't get a town clerk right now coming in as a residency with the residency requirement, the only thing we can do by law is to appoint a temporary. And the temporary, yeah, you're right. Nobody's going to come in and say, hey, I'll work for you through the election, and then you can tell me to go fry ice. They're not going to do that. You're right. But if they are hired with the possibility, if they do their job good, you know, yes, it'll get reposted and all that jazz, and they're still a good candidate, then I'm sure our town manager is going to bring forth that candidate as a permanent town clerk in the future. But we have to do something, you know. So if we vote no, not to do a temporary, good luck to the town, because you know it's going to come and bite us big time in the butt. That's the understanding I have after talking to council and things like that. Go ahead, Dawn. You want to? Maybe I said something wrong.
No, you didn't. I certainly appreciate the opinions of the board, and Mr. Chairman, I know you are in a very difficult spot, and you're not the only town. There are other towns as well, as you well know. I mean, I'm helping Spencer out as well. I think what the candidate would be looking for is the direction that the board is considering. And I think this is also where Jen is sitting. When she's talking to these candidates that I'm bringing to her, or other people that she might be finding and talking with, the candidates need to hear that they've got support from the board in what direction you're going. And I think at this point, John, as you said, you've got your October 7th meeting. It doesn't seem like it's too far away, but maybe you just have to wait. I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be a tough place for a candidate to leave their current position and step in. I don't know the answer here. I think
I agree. It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you my opinion. I really think that the residency requirement will be defeated at town meeting. That's my gut feeling.
Okay.
You know, but maybe if there's some assurances that candidates want, I would be willing to say, poll the board right now. Do we all agree that there should be a residency requirement or not a residency requirement? Because it depends on us which way that article will go at town meeting, believe me. It all depends on who's going to get up there and be for or against the residency requirement.
Mr. Chair.
Well, I don't mind coming right out and saying I'm totally against it. I think it's the dumbest thing. You know, it's a professional position. It takes a lot of education, a lot of knowledge. You just can't get some Joe Schmo off the street to become a town clerk. So, and if the town, but it still comes down to what are we going to do? Because we got an election that, according to what Dawn has stated to us, there's an awful lot of work that has to go into this, especially this year's election. And if we don't get somebody in here ASAP, then we're in a hurt. This town, you know, by law, we have to have a person, so if we could hire a temporary, and again, yes, even if again, I'll go back to the fact that, let's say it doesn't pass, John, and that's always a possibility that it's gonna fail. Then what do we do? Then what do you do? Because now you're gonna get nobody, so.
I have no problem with a temporary. I really don't. But I just would like to see a distinction between the temporary and the permanent position. That's all.
There is. It's a temporary position until
How
we
long?
make it permanent.
Forever? How long?
Yeah, it could be forever.
Usually a temporary position, there's a specific time frame involved when there's a temporary position.
No, I disagree.
Well, we did it with the town manager. We had an interim town manager, and they could only serve for 90 days, 120 days.
Right,
Then we had to renew it again. The selectmen had to vote to extend it. Why can't that be done here?
because you won't get anybody. You won't get anybody to quit a full-time job and come here for 90 days.
So in other words, there are candidates there that want to take this job, and they want to feel comfortable that they are going to be the permanent choice. So if that's the case, let's just make them the permanent choice. But we can't because we're hamstrung by the residency requirement.
Correct. You got it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I fully support that we need to consider a temporary. However, I can also see the need to post the position in the future and not just kind of sweep this person into that position. And I say that on the heels of what we did with the fire department. We had an interim chief, and then we posted the position and ended up hiring an external candidate. And while the interim chief was doing a wonderful job, through interviews, a different candidate was found and ultimately hired for the position. So I do think that this needs to be a clear distinction that this is a temporary interim position, and that once the residency requirement is resolved, which I personally don't feel as though we need a residency requirement for the town clerk. I think it is okay to come away from that for that position. I think that at town meeting, if the residency requirement is eliminated, we would potentially open up our pool of candidates. And while, yes, I absolutely hope that the person that we make temporary excels and is ultimately promoted to permanent, I do think that we need to have a distinction between temporary and permanent so that they're aware that there's not a guarantee and that they will have to reapply for the position once it's posted.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Megan 100%. I think that's what I was trying to say, and I don't think I could have said it as nicely as you have, Megan. But that's exactly how I feel. I don't know what other board members feel, but I just want there to be a distinction. And you're right, there may be a bigger pool of candidates. Who knows? That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
So what's the motion then? Because
Well, Meg has a motion on the floor.
yeah, I know.
She's
She's altered it.
for an
She's
amendment.
altered it like 3 times. So that's why, can we clarify what the motion is that's been altered?
So my motion will be that we consider a temporary town clerk, and that once the time comes that we are able to determine if the residency requirement is going to go away, we would post a permanent position in the future, date to be determined once the residency requirement is figured out for a permanent position, and that the temporary position will be welcome to apply for the full-time permanent position.
Second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any more comments?
I have a very, very quick clarification.
Go
I
ahead,
can't-
Cheryl. What the heck?
Why not, right? Very good motion, Meg. Thank you very much. That was great.
Thank
So will it be that the Board of Selectmen brings it up after the town meeting vote about the residency requirement? would it be us that would bring that back up again? Or is it just open-ended?
No, it'd have to be reposted for a permanent town clerk without the
Okay.
residency. And that would be done by Jen's office.
Okay,
And then she would make the recommendation to us and we'd approve it or deny it.
got it. Okay.
Right, Jen?
Yep, that's right.
Meg, is that what was that your intent, Meg?
Yes, I think we should leave the temporary person as interim until the point where we've posted the position and have a candidate, hopefully that person, but till we
Right.
have a candidate ready to be appointed so that we don't end up at a point where we do not have a town clerk again.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We gotta cross our Ts and dot our Is. All
Mhm.
right, any more comment? Then I will call for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. We will hire a temporary town clerk. All right, Jen. Thank you, Dawn.
Thanks, Don.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Yes,
Thank you, Dawn.
You're welcome.
And just in enclosure, I'll work with the chairman to see what we might have for available dates in the near future, depending on the outcome of the vote this evening. The next item on the town manager's report is the town meeting quorum requirement. As you know, because of the COVID-19, the legislature had approved a bill that would allow towns through a local option to reduce the quorum of a town meeting. Because of the fact that last year for a fall town meeting, we had to wait for almost 50 some odd minutes to get a quorum. My recommendation is that on your meeting of September 29th, that the board will have an agenda item to discuss the quorum requirement option that you adopted for our annual town meeting, which in the event that we don't have a quorum of a normal 100 people, we'd still be able to proceed. And so the board could vote to reduce that quorum no less than 10% of the number that otherwise would be required. Again, hopefully we don't need it, but if that were to happen, we'd still be able to go forward with having the town meeting. So that the chairman has asked me to articulate that we'll have that on the agenda for the board to consider once again. There are posting requirements with that. That's why I'm telling you in advance, because we not only have to post it in advance differently than our normal posting, but we also afterwards would have to notify actually the clerk would have to notify the Attorney General's office that the board voted to reduce the voting requirement for attendance. Voter registration deadline, just to let you know that the last day to register to vote is October for the October 7th town meeting is going to be September 25th at 8 p.m. Just also because we talked about the warrant tonight, I wanted to inform the board that we have already posted for the planning board public hearings, which will take place with entertaining changes to the zoning bylaws that are contained within the warrant for September 28th, which is a Monday in the evening, I believe at 6 o'clock. I also wanted to let the board know that we finally have, after a very lengthy process, a pilot agreement between Blue Wave and Goldman Sachs. They're signing off on that today. When I put my John Hancock on that, I will circulate it with the board, but this will resolve the matters before the State Tax Appellate Board, and it will reduce the town's tax liability and provide the town with a predictable tax revenue figure for the next several decades for our budgeting purposes. I also wanted to alert the board as part of my manager's report that the library construction project that you have seen that we've been engaged with as part of a grant through the Mass Historic Commission, as it got underway and was looking at the building envelope, as you can see, we have had repairs on the building envelope that were well underway. I don't know if Tim will put them up. But we have a number of photographs that have been supplied by our DPW director, who's also in charge of our overall facilities. And that's not it. But the brick facade underlying the actual exterior brick has deteriorated markedly, which means that what we thought was going to be a superficial job, so to speak, to seal the exterior of the brick on the outside to prevent water from getting into the wall of the library. We had to call in a structural engineer because the original brick underneath the brick was so structurally non-capable in their eyes of being able to support itself without the exterior wall that they called in a structural engineer. And that has meant that there has been an assessment of the overall condition, and hence we are going to need to actually put more money into that project. But it's a really good thing that we applied for this grant because we had no idea how deteriorated the underpinning wall from, the 1900s, 1800s, late 1800s was. But this particular project exposed that. And now we're going to be able to, go forward and fix that. Otherwise, we would not have been wise to it, and the actual wall could have predictably collapsed on its own, even underneath the exterior wall. So you're going to see me talk about that at town meeting, but it is something that needs to be addressed. And thank goodness we were able to find out what the condition was underneath. Next item is just to alert the board that inside the police department, oftentimes the police chief and lieutenants and sergeants will actually give commendations or certificates of commendation for different levels of activity. And you have in your possession some information that has been circulated by our police chief about officers Fournier and Fairbanks, who were each awarded inside the police department by their peers on August 25th. Letters of commendation or certificates of commendation relative to a breaking and entering vehicles in Leicester. One of our officers was on duty and one of them was off duty and happened to see something highly suspicious in Leicester. And there had been a multi-jurisdictional and multi-agency pursuit of what has been an ongoing issue of breaking and entering into cars from some out-of-state perpetrators. And because of the excellent, I call it awareness skills and assessment skills that our officers had, one on the scene was able to report that, and they were able to track and follow and successfully arrest. And this is part of a much broader ring of breaking and entering into vehicles, including potentially here in our community. So I wanted to make the board aware that the police chief did not want them to come before the board here, but it was to allow the board to be understanding that their own peers and the leadership within the police department has awarded them certificates of commendation. The next item is just to let the board know that I recently had a meeting with the Oxford Business Association, or at least two people from the Oxford Business Association, Norman LeBlanc, who's on our planning board, and Dan Prouty, and they've approached the town manager's office relative to a potentially exciting project where we would have sort of a public nonprofit a partnership. They're interested in actually purchasing a piece of land near the center of town that currently is blighted. That was the former foundation of the Jocelyn Mill over along the railroad tracks. And they're interested in actually developing that into a park and donating it to the town. They have the preliminary drawing plans, and I don't know if Tim can put those up or not, but we have some initial renderings. They will be coming, before the town board in the future. I do know that there's a lot of excitement that the Oxford Business Association has with regards to this. And I wanted to alert the board in advance that it'll be another project that is going to come before us, and it's very exciting. I've just had received word that Tim's not able to put that photograph up, so I will circulate that to the board independently. We're having some technology problems this evening. Speaking of technology, the next item is to let you know that we have been converting all of our office computer equipment to Office 365. We're in the midst of creating this conversion to a cloud-based system. Many of you have noticed that our email has already been converted to Outlook 365, and now we have enhanced security and reliability. And additionally, the software does allow us collaboration between our teams and users. So that will continue to move us into the 20th century with regards to our technology, which is always very much well received by our employees and hopefully our residents alike. Just to alert the board that our splash pad, which had been opened in a modified schedule, thanks to both Shelley Lambert and Stacy White, has just officially closed recently for the season. And I want to thank the assistance of staff who do not have their permanent positions in place because of the COVID-19 stepping up to the plate to allow us to have an opportunity for children and their family to abide by the social distancing guidelines for the state, but also to allow us to have offered them some kind of recreation for the summer. The next item is just to let you know that the chief, Anthony Sad, for our police department, has notified me that they're going to be applying for what they call the local law enforcement burn justice assistance grant bill. That we're looking to see if we can actually apply for a potential canine program. We're hopeful we may be successful in this endeavor, but I wanted to give the heads up to the board that we're going to be pursuing that. The next item, with a lot of regret to have to inform the board, as you know, we have a lot of employees who've served the town for many, many years, including our assistant town manager, Karen Crandall. I see Casey is on the line with us here. I just wanted to alert the board that on August 31st, Karen had alerted my office, and specifically to my attention and the Board of Selectmen, that she will be retiring in November after 26 years of service. And we, are going to be inviting the board for a retirement party, similar to the way that we had done our clerk's party on September 25th, 2020. And that will be a retirement luncheon at the Social Senior Center. And I want to say to Casey, ever since I've been here, she's somebody who had a large vacuum to try to fill in the absence of a town manager and in absence of staff. She has served this board very capably, and for many years dedicated herself to the town of Oxford. If you read her retirement letter, you know her heart is here after having been a resident for many years. And even though she doesn't live here now, her heart is definitely here. And I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that we certainly will give commendations and citations at that retirement farewell. And, I take my hat off to you, Casey, and thank you so much for making my transition easy and always keeping the board in a positive direction prior to my coming on board. The next item is to allow the board to understand that there is the bulk item drop-off is coming for the fall. Sean Dival has announced the dates for the fall bulk drop-off for residents north of Charlton Street and Sutton Ave. That will be October 31st, will be their day that they can drop off bulk items. And residents south of Charlton Street and Sutton Ave will be able to do it on November 7th. Again, the bulk item drop-off time period is from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Oxford Transfer Station at 200 Leicester Street. You can go to our website because it has been posted there. And I'm going to conclude this evening by doing a little advertising for the Last Green Valley, since they were good enough to give us a lovely grant that helped us acquire Carbuncle Park property recently to expand our park there. They have just come out with their beautiful 2020 October calendars. And since we are not always open officially to the public, with the exception of our concierge window, you can come and get one of these beautiful calendars. And our town has participated in their Walktober events. And our service window is open. As you can see, there's a lot of great helpful information here. And the Last Green Valley does a fantastic job of trying to coordinate an entire region around the premise that it is a heritage corridor that is joined by waterways, mills, and the history that has been laid out between all the different communities. So if anybody would like one of these, just come up and ask us at our service window on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or give us a call and we'll pop it in the mail. But it's a nice thing to have in your kitchen because it gives you the entire schedule of what they're doing, and is a wonderful calendar to have through that entire month. So that would conclude my report, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much, Jen. Selectmen's requests. We'll start with Megan Triano.
Good evening. I have 3 things tonight, but I think one of them we already touched on, so I was glad that we got the update about Article 12 of the warrant. Jen, with the 855 square feet land issue that we're having at the property at 20 and 56, is that the only thing that's holding them up from going forward, or have they received their license finally approval, or?
No, Madam Selectman, they can't receive their license until they actually codify this purchase and sale. They expect that to go rather quickly because of the fact that they already have licenses that they hold from the Cannabis Control Commission. So, but no, I mean, they don't have the full property. This little piece is like stuck in the middle of it. It's a bizarre thing that's happened. So I think that they're ready and they've got all their ducks in order and ready to go. We just need to do this one piece to transfer it over, because technically we still own it and they wouldn't have a clear title on the property, and the Commonwealth won't go for that.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
And then my next thing that I don't want to get into a long debate about, I'm hoping it doesn't turn into one, but I wanted to just kind of bring up Halloween, because I know we're in the middle of a pandemic and social distancing guidelines and whatnot. And I know we have our selectmen's policy regarding Halloween. And I guess I just kind of want to make my opinion known on the matter, that I think that Halloween is a public safety issue. I mean, a public health issue. I don't think it's a Board of Selectmen issue. And I personally think that because I've been asked by people in the community about if the Board of Selectmen is going to be allowing trick-or-treating. I personally think that we should not meddle with our policy, and that we should just let it be, and that we should let members of the community make informed decisions as to if they want to allow people on their properties to do trick-or-treating or not. I think that parents should be able to be parents, and I think that residents should be able to be residents in that respect. I really don't think it's my right to say who you can have at your house. I can recommend masks, and I do support masks and social distancing and taking this pandemic seriously. However, when asked about Halloween, it's kind of open-ended right now, because I mean, Governor Baker hasn't, that I'm aware of, said anything about Halloween, but I guess I just want to make it known that I personally feel that we should let Halloween happen, unless, of course, there's some sort of public health issue that suddenly arises that makes it extremely unsafe. But I do think that we should let adults make adult decisions for their own children. And then my last thing, I wanted to end on a good note. It's been brought to my attention that today our fire department, coupled with Home Depot, to do a wonderful community service project for one of our World War II Navy veterans who is disabled in town. He is a resident in town who had been in need of a handicap ramp access to his house. And I've been made aware that Home Depot donated the supplies and members of our fire department donated their time to build a ramp for this individual. And Home Depot also went above and beyond with that as well and donated new smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors for the homeowner so that they can continue to be safe and gain access to their house. And I just thought that it was important that we recognize the efforts of them. And again, I mean, kudos to them. And it really is just another one of those moments that it makes me really proud to live in Oxford and know that we have all of these great people in our community. And that's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Megan. Cheryl, you're up.
Good evening. I was going to also just ask the chairman if we could have, if we could put Halloween on our agenda, because you are right, Meg, we are getting a lot of questions about it. But I just want to say, I think Selectman Troiano spoke very eloquently on it, and I am in support of that. And, you know, again, with the mindset that if there's more other information that comes forward, maybe that would change my mind. But, you know, I think she spoke very eloquently and very matter of fact and succinctly, and I would support that. I think that it would be a good idea for us to do that. On the flip side, I just wanted to let you know, I did hear, I don't know if anyone has heard, but there is I don't know if anyone has heard about the unemployment scam going on. I don't know, Jen, if you've heard about it, but apparently people are applying for unemployment, which obviously raises our unemployment rates. The city of Worcester just got hit with 180 employees. People overseas actually had filed for the claims, and the city didn't know about it until they reached out to the employees, and they were like, no, we didn't do that. So this is the second time I've heard it, that there's this scam going on when it comes to unemployment. So just wanted to, I mean, I'm sure the police chief or something like that will come forward with it, but in the days of watching our pennies, I'd hate for us to have to be you know, we'd have to pay for people that really don't exist, type of thing. And then Jen, I just wanted to ask, I know that we have all of this construction going on over at the library. Now that school is open, whether it's virtually or in person or hybrid or whatnot, do we have any thoughts of opening the library? Because I just know that there are a lot of students who use the library for resources, and I don't know if that's something that's been looked at or discussed yet. Mute. Unmute.
Yeah, the director for the library did have a phased opening and was contingent on how things were going. Some concern recently relative to some potential contact tracing that was necessary related to an employee, which may have had a potential exposure, but it wound up not doing that. So I think there's been a heightened sense that right now what they've been doing has been working out well. I do think that they're, based on her plan, that they will get to that. And I know that they're trying to do that, but having just recently gone through some really concerning aspects to this, once again, it's like you're trying to balance keeping the professional people who work there safe, as well as to give them a service. And that's, it's, you know, to do it in a way that still allows people to do things in a library. It's very different feel altogether based on the restrictions that we have. And I do think that Brittany will get to that point. I do think that they would have liked to have probably been at that point a little earlier, but we did have some things that had occurred that made them want to kind of pause and you know, make sure that they'll be capable of dealing with that. We also have issues where, I have to actually increase some and just recently put more money towards custodial because the duties for custodians has really increased once again as we try to ramp up doing a number of these sort of intermittent exposures. To the public, it winds up actually not being so easy for our custodial and maintenance people to keep up with keeping our buildings very safe. And so even for the senior center, we've done a little limited engagement for a very small group, our knitting group, where they are able to come to the senior center, but are adhering to the not only social distance guidelines, but we've then ramped up the cleaning of the facility. So we have some people who want to do that and some people who don't. And so we're not quite there yet. And I think everybody's been hitting the pause button because we're entering into the fall. And this is the time period where we're definitely concerned about people being indoors more than outdoors and the virus actually being transmitted more readily to people. And that's still a major concern. So, but I will pass it along that you heard from residents and they're hoping that we can get back to doing some things in the library in person. I will definitely convey that.
Thanks. I think it's just the computers, and having the internet access, the students. And then I actually also had someone who doesn't have a computer at home and, they need to file unemployment claims and apply for jobs, that type of thing. We all think of the library as books, but, there's a lot of people, as a lot of people who do rely on the library, and it is hard to balance, but at the same time, you wonder if there are some things that can be done. So I appreciate you passing that along.
Okay. I will do that.
Thank you. And gosh, Karen Crandall, you know what? For as long as I've been involved with the town, she's always been there. She's always been a major support. She's always been a ton of help, guidance. She knows everything. She kept everything. She could put her fingers on things. And honest to God, what a great pleasure to work with her. And, despite anything and everything that was going on, smile on her face, and, loved to serve the town and loved working with all of us. And I'll miss her terribly, but I wish her well in retirement. So thank you, Casey. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. Mike.
Make it easy. I have nothing this evening.
All right. Thank you, Mike. John?
Because of the late hour, I'm going to hold off on whatever I had to say. And obviously it isn't that pressing, so I'll hold off till the next meeting. I'm ready to go home and see if the Celtics won or not.
All right, John. Thank you. And I have nothing else myself. So at this moment, other than Karen, you and I will talk if you're listening. Other than that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and second. I'll go for a vote.
Yes.
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 And I'll vote yes. 5 in the affirmative. We are adjourned. You all have a great evening and wonderful couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Bye.